today, Andrew. So my name is Micaela, as Andrew outlined, and I was first elected to Monash City Council in 2008, so coming up to 7 years now, being involved with local government as a councillor. Just a show of hands in the room, how many mayors do we have? Yep, a few. And how many councillors? Quite a few. How many officers? Okay. All right. So basically, pretty much everyone in the room is well and truly has an excellent understanding of what council does, what people would like to see us do, and some of the delightful budgeting processes that we are already involved in and in the throes of right now as well. So I won't be sharing anything new with you, but perhaps Mark and Ron might be learning some new things or get the ball rolling in terms of thinking as well. So Andrew, you mentioned at the start that rate capping has been keeping you awake at night occasionally. It's certainly been keeping us at Monash awake, and our CEO as well, not to mention our number of staff as well. I'm sure that there's a number of people in the room that are thinking about, well, what does this mean for local government? What does it mean for our council, and what does it mean for our community? So I'm just going to give you some examples of what it means for us at Monash. So I can see where this policy platform, this election platform of rate capping has come from, to a point anyway. It's about people questioning, well, where is this coming from? It sounded like a sexy platform in terms of let's cap the rates because let's stop the jaunts, the trips that all of us apparently take overseas and to wild and wonderful places. And as we've started to unpick that platform...
We pay for ourselves.
Please note the sarcasm in my voice. But as we start to unpick what sounded like apparently a good idea to some, there's some really huge challenges that come with the realities of what that actually means. Oh, I did have some fancy graphics. It's not working, but that's okay. You can still get the images as well. So, another thing that we do tend to get scrutinised with is where our rates are going in terms of what some of us would argue is our crucial essential services. So I don't know about you, but I often get people calling or emailing or stopping me on the street and complaining about, why do I have to have my rates go towards maternal child health services? I don't use them. Why do I have to pay for libraries? I don't use them. And some of the images behind me depict some of the other things that I've received anyway. Just have other people had queries about what they find surprising in terms of where their rates are going? Yeah, I'm seeing lots of nods in the audience and some hands up as well. So, you know, that's always going to come. I imagine it happens at other levels of government as well, but it's something that we deal with on a daily basis as councillors. And it's funny because, you know, we are the level of government that is closest to our communities. In my opinion, I think that we are probably the most transparent in terms of where your rates go. Most of us in getting here this morning would have seen a number of examples of what our councils have contributed towards to make our lives better. We would have walked down a footpath or drove down a local road. We would have noticed trees that were either trimmed or not trimmed, and the list goes on. So it's no surprise where your rates do go, but it can be confusing to people that are starting to scrutinise where it does go. So what does this all mean in dollars for us? And again, sorry if some of my slides are missing, but also I'll just talk through what we've done at Monash. So some years ago, we used to have what, you know, some other councils probably had as well in our communication with our communities about where our rates went. It was a graph. It might have been a list of different services, a different list of different infrastructure where our rates went towards. And so at Monash a few years ago, we decided to shake things up a little bit. And if there's anyone here from Moreland, it was based on something that I came across at Moreland. And it was a graphical representation, a really simplistic image that looked like it was hand-drawn and that depicted where rates went. And that made so much more sense to people, and we got a lot of positive feedback from our communities that it helps the understanding of where their rates were going towards. So there was an image of, you know, parks and buildings and different people within our communities, and it broke down where our rates went towards. So that's been great in helping us communicate with people. It's also opened up a few more doors towards scrutiny, but you can easily see by the image that the least amount of percentage of your rates does go towards administration, which is where we're often scrutinised, and the most goes towards people. It goes towards services to making our lives a lot better than it would be if we didn't have some of the council services that we deliver. So I wanted to talk about what this meant in terms of dollars and in terms of dollars at the City of Monash as well. So we'll often say, and it's, you know, it is factual, that Monash is the lowest rating council in metropolitan Victoria. I don't say that with pride, because I know that there's a downside to that. Before I was elected onto council, I remember getting my first rates notice, and I remember thinking, oh, this looks a bit weird, because it was about a third of the price of what I expected that I would be paying for my annual rates. And I actually called the council and said, is there something wrong with my rates notice here? And to my delight, there wasn't. It actually was the low amount that it stated. Now, whilst that can feel like a win to an individual or to a family or a household, there are consequences to that. So our infrastructure, I don't need to tell you guys this, is ageing. Our infrastructure, there's different expectations from our communities in terms of what that infrastructure looks like. And by infrastructure, I'm talking footpaths, sporting pavilions, libraries, the list goes on and on and on. So in terms of keeping your rates low, yes, it's delightful. Individuals might love it for a moment in time, but often people that you hear from that are scrutinising these rates are often the first people that you hear from if their streets haven't been swept, if their bin hasn't been collected, if their library hours have reduced or aren't open as long as they'd like it to as well. So it's often keeping that balance, and often it's conflicting as well, where people want to keep their rates low, but they want to see more services as well. They want to see the most up-to-date infrastructure available. This is a graph that depicts where Monash City Council is sitting in terms of our current rating system, and again, it'll probably be quite familiar to you as well. You probably have a similar graph that demonstrates that, you know, council proposes and has essentially control over a large majority of our revenue in terms of we can set what the rate is based on our needs, and that's what's really crucial. Excuse me?
City councils have a much greater control over their revenue than small rurals.
And I imagine that it would be different for a lot of people in the room. I'm just sharing Monash City Council's experience here, and I'm sure that you'd all have your own experiences to share with the panel after we conclude our speakers as well. But this is just Monash, just to give you an idea. Post rate capping, as it is initially proposed, it's going to look a little bit more like this. So that same majority that we did have control over in terms of setting is going to be dramatically different. It's going to be potentially restricted. And it was interesting listening to both Ron and Mark in terms of just confirming that what is proposed is an initial benchmark, and that there is some flexibility that it may go beyond CPI. There may be other mechanisms in place as well to be able to justify where we set our rates, which is, you know, it's music to my ears. I'm sure it's music to a lot of people's ears in this room, but there's also a bit of scepticism as well, because we are starting to prepare our budgets. Most of us either would have confirmed them, our draft budgets, and had them on display now, and others will be doing it next week. And it's been a long and arduous process to get to this point. I doubt anyone in this room just plucked a percentage out of their head and said, let's put our rates at this amount and then match the budget. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of effort put into where our funds will go, where they need to go, and there's a lot of conflict, and we don't get to meet all the needs that we would like to do. This was touched on as well, and again, really familiar to people in the room. One of our main concerns is not about just maintaining our council budgets, our services, our infrastructure as it is right now. We're really concerned about the future. And behind me are some images that demonstrate just some of the areas that would be of huge concerns to many of us in the room. So one of the big places that we're seeing a lot more pressure is around our sporting pavilions and our sporting infrastructure. So we have our pavilions, which are quite, they're decades old in the city of Monash. I'm sure in other cities they're even older than that, and even in new communities, whilst they might be new, it's still the demand for its use would still be quite high. Within the pavilions, change rooms are not meeting the needs of our current communities. We have a growing amount of females participating in sport that are forced to use change rooms that were developed for men. They're forced to use change rooms that are full of urinals. And I could go on about what they currently look like, which is just really inappropriate, and it's not supportive for encouraging more women to participate in team sports. And that's just one particular example of the different populations that are using our sporting pavilions. I also have an image of what is a synthetic approach to our sporting infrastructure. So again, in the city of Monash, much like a number of you, we sell all of our fields, our grass fields, bar one that we've just introduced, and it was a tough fight to be able to have a number of people supportive of starting to look at synthetic grass for our fields. And the arguments for it is, an initial outlay which might seem quite expensive, but you get a lot more use of the ground, and the maintenance is lower over the years as well. In newer communities, this seems to be the standard approach, but even then, there are challenges along the way. The new synthetic field that I just mentioned, which is a soccer pitch in the city of Monash, it wasn't even opened yet, and we had an arson attack on it, so it was burnt before it was even open. So all of a sudden, we have to spend more money on that as well. These are just some of the challenges that we face as councils every day. The other two images I have are around immunisations and maternal child health care. So again, we can keep up to it with a degree, but with growing populations and growing needs, will we be so easily able to match the ratios in terms of how much we need to increase these services? This is just one example. Wi-Fi. So there's a lot of new things as well that councils are being requested to support their communities with. And Wi-Fi is one of those things that has become a little bit of an expectation in certain areas as well. Free access to Wi-Fi not only in our libraries, but in open spaces and around our other infrastructure as well. And whilst it might be an invisible thing, it costs money. And just keeping up with technology is a huge cost to councils as well. Again, I'm not sharing anything new to anyone in the audience, but I'm assuming that I'm confirming some of your own challenges that you're dealing with, and no doubt what Mark and Ron will be hearing over the months to come as well. So in a nutshell, some of the key issues that councils are going to face if we are to have a rate cap at CPI is this list behind me. It's going to really limit our ability to adopt new initiatives, to keep up with the times, to keep up with the demands on our infrastructure, and to expand our services. If anything, we're going to be spending less on infrastructure. We're going to be spending less on services, or we're going to have to really question, where are our vital services? What should council be delivering? Are there other opportunities to work with other partners to deliver it? And even then, that might seem good on paper, but our communities feel most comfortable with local government delivering their services. There's been a number of services at Monash in terms of aged care, and even with our childcare services, that we've been questioning. Are we the best organisation to be delivering these services? And even though there may be more other organisations out there that can deliver it, perhaps even at a better level, our communities feel the safest with us. That's what they want. So it's not that easy to just say, well, let's start outsourcing our services. In terms of finances as well, there'll be impacts in terms of cash surpluses and deficits and capital ratios, and it'll also really, and it was touched on before as well, have a big impact on our defined benefits. And at Monash, we had a huge impost on us a few years ago. It was into the millions of dollars, and we just won't have the capacity to be able to respond to that into the future without being detrimental to delivering our services or maintaining or building new infrastructure. So just some final thoughts. Rate capping affects everyone. It's going to impact on everyone in this room, it's going to impact on everyone outside of this room as well. So I find it interesting that, that people do critique or demand the need for a cap on the amounts of rates that they're paying, because it's going to be very visible very quickly just what sort of impact that does have. And we would have all felt it before, where, you know, we might have thought we were doing a good thing to reduce our sweet sweeping from 6 weeks to 5 weeks. 6 weeks to 7 weeks. But, you know, inevitably the following year, when you look at the types of feedback that you receive from your communities, that's where we've seen the increase in concerns. It's usually been where we've tried to be a little bit flexible with where we're investing our time and our energies. So it's a really, really difficult balance for us to get right, not only at the City of Monash but in councils as well. Another thing is that I find interesting that I'm hearing from a lot of people within our communities that they're actually willing to pay more on their rates if they can see where it's going towards. So one thing that I always get asked about more recently is around wheelie bins and the need to increase. So currently at Monash we have our recycle bin collection every fortnight, and I'm having a lot of people saying they're struggling with that. And can we start to increase that frequency to weekly? We have a hard rubbish collection once a year at the City of Monash. Again, people are asking if that can become more frequent. So how do we address that? How do we match that if there's going to be restrictions in terms of our potential revenue as well? Another area that I thought I would just touch on as well is there are processes in place already to scrutinise where your rates are going. Again, we're just going through this process right now. We've spent hours and hours and hours on compiling our budgets. It's about to go public, if not already, and we will have questions from our communities. We will hold information sessions. The information is available electronically and in hard copy in places for people to ask questions, and we'll be there to respond to them as well. So there are processes in place, and so I do question what is another level of scrutiny going to achieve. I know the VLGA is really starting to look into other innovative ways to look at our budgeting processes as well, and participatory budgeting has had some excellent results in other jurisdictions within Australia and within Victoria as well. Usually, when people feel like they are a part of a process, where they can see where funds are going, they're one, supportive, but two, they also they can see where you need to start to question things. And more often than not, you'll find that communities are supportive of paying a little bit extra or reducing a service if they can see why. And those processes are already in place. And finally, if people aren't supportive, if they don't like where rates are going, how much their rates are, there is one final mechanism for addressing that, and that's voting. So, you know, next year we'll all be going into our next round of elections for local government, and if our communities aren't happy with the way that we're approaching our roles as councillors and as council officers, well, not council officers, but as councillors, they can vote for someone else that they feel might do a better job. Hell, they might even run for it. So, in conclusion, there are a lot of challenges. They aren't unique to the City of Monash. They do differ depending on your municipality, your geography and your populations. But it is going to be a challenge. It's a challenge working within our current system, and if that is reduced or limited, it's going to be even more so, and someone's going to have to pick up the slack. And I'm sure many of you have other things to share, but we'll hear about that throughout the morning. Thank you.